They call me their retirement plan in a text they thought I'd never see. I never thought the sound of a diesel engine on a bulldozer would become the sweetest symphony I'd ever hear. But sometimes, to build a new life, you have to tear down the old one right down to the last brick. Let me back up. My name is David, and for 42 years I've been what people call salt of the earth. I'm a construction guy. The kind with scars on my knuckles and concrete dust permanently embedded under my fingernails. My hands tell the story of every foundation I've poured, every wall I've framed, every roof I've shingled under the brutal summer sun. They're not pretty hands, but they're honest hands. Hands that build things that last. 10 years ago, I built an in-law suite onto my parents' house. Not hired someone to do it. Built it myself. Every stud, every joist, every square inch of drywall. I knew the story of every single nail in that place because I was the one who drove it home. The pride of the whole project was a fireplace. River stone, hand-selected from a quarry 3 hours north. I spent a full month laying that stone, fitting each piece like a puzzle, making sure the mortar joints were perfect. On cold nights, when the fire was going and the light danced across those stones, I'd sit there and feel something I don't have words for. Satisfaction, maybe, the bone-deep knowledge that I created something beautiful with my own 2 hands. The suite had everything. Separate entrance, full kitchen, bathroom with one of those rainfall shower heads, and yeah, a jacuzzi tub because Mom had always wanted one. I told myself it was an investment in the family home, a place where my parents could age gracefully, and maybe someday, when they were gone, it would be mine. We never put anything in writing. We were family. You don't need contract with family. Right. I'd been paying their mortgage for the past 3 years. Not helping with it. Paying it. All of it. $1,400 a month, like clockwork. Dad had some health issues, lost his job, and the money got tight. I stepped up because that's what you do. You take care of your own. I was single, no kids, pulling decent money for my contracting work. I could handle it. And besides, I lived there rent-free in the suite I built. Seemed fair. Seemed like everyone was winning. I should have known better. My brother Steve rolled up to the house 3 weeks before Thanksgiving in a leased Tesla. Bright red, looked like it cost more than my truck and all my tools combined. Steve is 4 years younger than me, softer in every way that matters. His hands are smooth, moisturized probably. He's never swung a hammer in his life, except maybe at some corporate team-building exercise where they built birdhouses for charity. Steve calls himself a life coach. He's got an Instagram with maybe 12,000 followers where he posts pictures of himself meditating on beaches and quotes from people who actually did things with their lives. His bio says he helps people achieve their highest potential through alignment and manifestation. I'm still not entirely sure what that means, but I know it doesn't pay the bills. His wife works as a dental hygienist. She's the one with the real job. When Steve got out of that Tesla, he was wearing white pants. White pants. In November. Who does that? He gave me this weird half hug where he barely touched me, like he might catch something from my Carhartt jacket that actually gets used for work. He looked at the house, at my truck in the driveway with the ladder rack and the toolboxes, and he smiled this smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then he told me my work was low vibration. Those were his actual words. Low vibration. Like swinging a hammer and building things people need, was somehow spiritually inferior to posting motivational quotes and selling overpriced online courses about finding your inner purpose. While his wife dragged 3 heavy suitcases up the driveway, Steve carefully carried only one thing from a Tesla, a massive crystal singing bowl, the kind that costs $300 and is supposed to clear negative energy or align your frequencies or whatever. He set it down on the porch like it was made of glass, completely oblivious to his wife struggling with the luggage behind him. That told me everything I needed to know about his priorities. He wanted to talk to me about cryptocurrency, some new token that was going to revolutionize everything. He pulled out his phone, started showing me charts and graphs that meant absolutely nothing to me, talking about blockchain and decentralization and getting it on the ground floor. I nodded along, but I was watching his hands as he gestured. Smooth, soft, manicured, Not a single callus. Not one scar from a slip chisel or a nail gun misfire. My hands were in my pockets. I could feel every rough patch, every old injury, every reminder of actual work. And I felt something I'm not proud of. Shame. Just for a second. Like maybe he was right, and I was doing it all wrong. Thanksgiving came. The whole family gathered around the table in my parents' dining room. Turkey, stuffing, the works. Mom had outdone herself. I'd spent the morning fixing their garbage disposal that had been making a grinding noise for 2 weeks, and replacing a section of fence that had rotted out. You know, low vibration stuff. We sat down to eat, and Dad said grace. Thank God for family, for health, for abundance. I bowed my head and felt grateful. These were my people. This was my home. Everything I'd worked for was right here in this room. Then Steve cleared his throat. He had an announcement. He looked at his wife, at their daughter who was picking at her sweet potatoes, and then at my parents. He said the universe had been sending him signs. Strong signs. He needed to get back to his roots, reconnect with family, rebuild his foundation. All this spiritual language that sounded deep but didn't actually mean anything concrete. The universe was telling him to move back home. Not asking. Telling. He'd already made the decision. He was going to move into my parents' house with his wife and kid. Temporarily, of course. Just until he got his coaching business to the next level. He'd been going through some financial challenges, growth opportunities. He called them. The Tesla lease was killing him. He had credit card debt from a retreat he'd hosted in Sedona that didn't get enough attendees. And his wife was tired of carrying the load alone. Mom's face lit up like Christmas morning. Her baby boy coming home. Dad nodded slowly, like this was the most natural thing in the world. I sat there with a forkful of turkey halfway to my mouth, waiting for someone to ask me what I thought about this. Nobody did. Steve kept talking. He'd need space to do his coaching calls, somewhere quiet and zen, somewhere with good energy. He looked around the room, and I swear I felt it coming before he even said it. The in-law suite would be perfect. My stomach dropped, just fell right through the floor. The suite I built, the fireplace I spent a month on, the jacuzzi I'd installed for Mom, but never once used myself because I felt like it wasn't really mine. The separate entrance that I'd framed out in the dead of winter, fingers so cold I could barely hold a hammer. I waited for someone to laugh, to tell Steve that was ridiculous, to remind him that I lived there, that I'd built it, that I was paying the mortgage on this entire house. Dad spoke first. He said they'd been thinking about this. Actually, the suite would be ideal for Steve's family. They needed the space. I was just one person. I didn't need that much room. And the garage was weatherproof, insulated even. I'd done a good job on it. I could stay out there temporarily while I looked for my own place. It wouldn't be for long. Temporarily. Mom jumped in before I could process what was happening. She said they were doing this for family. Steve needed support right now. He was going through a transitional period. I was strong. I was capable. I'd understand. The suite had a separate entrance in that jacuzzi, and Steve really needed it for chakra restoration. She actually said chakra restoration with a straight face. I tried to argue. I reminded them about the mortgage payments, about the work I'd done on the house, about the fact that I'd built that suite with my own hands, that every board and nail and stone had my sweat in it. I looked straight at Dad. My voice came out tighter than I wanted. Dad, I paid a mortgage on this house. $1,400 a month. Every month for 3 years. The table went silent. Forks stopped moving. Dad set his down carefully, like he was handling something fragile. Then he looked at me with that expression, the one I remember from childhood when I'd disappointed him, when I got AC in math, when I quit baseball. That look that made me feel about 3 feet tall. David, he said, and his voice had dropped into that low, measured tone that was somehow worse than yelling. We fed you for 18 years, put clothes on your back, drove you to school, paid for your braces. Did we ever send you an invoice for that? Did your mother ever hand you a bill for the diapers or the sleepless nights? He let that hang there. Don't make this about money, he continued. Don't make this transactional. That's not who we raised you to be. Your brother needs help. Family helps family. I thought we taught you that. The shame hit me like a punch to the gut. It always did. That tone, that disappointment, it shut my mouth better than duct tape ever could. Because he was right, wasn't he? They had raised me. They had sacrificed. And here I was, throwing money in their faces when my brother was struggling. At least, that's what it felt like in that moment. I sat back down, stopped talking. The conversation moved on without me. Dad cut me off. He said they appreciated everything I had done. But this wasn't negotiation. Steve was family. I was family too, of course. But I was in a better position to be flexible. The garage had electricity and that little space heater I'd installed. I could throw an air mattress in there. I didn't need much. I never needed much. Mom said I was being selfish. That really landed. Selfish. I was being selfish. Me, the guy who'd been paying their mortgage for 3 years, who'd built them an entire addition to their house, who'd fixed every broken thing in this place for a decade without asking for a dime. Steve didn't say anything. He just sat there with this expression on his face that I finally recognized. Satisfaction. Like he'd known this was going to happen all along. Like this was just a natural order of things. The universe providing for him the way it always did. His wife looked uncomfortable. At least she had the decency for that. But she didn't speak up either. Nobody was speaking up for me. I looked around that table and realized I was completely alone. The conversation moved on. Mom asked about what dishes needed to be washed. Dad turned on the TV for football, and Steve started talking about what color he wanted to paint the suite. Something calming. Maybe a sage green. Good for meditation. I stood up from the table and walked outside. Nobody followed me. I stood in the driveway for a long time, looking at that suite. The roof I'd shingled. The windows I'd installed. The siding I'd chosen because it would match the main house perfectly. From the outside, you couldn't even tell where the original structure ended and my addition began. I'd made it seamless. A perfect extension of their home. And now it wasn't mine anymore. Maybe it never was. That night, I moved my stuff to the garage. Not all of it. Most of my things stayed in boxes because there wasn't room. The garage was fine for storing tools and equipment. It was not fine for a human being to live in, but I made it work. Air mattress on the concrete floor. My clothes in garbage bags. The space heater running constantly because November nights get cold and concrete holds that cold like a grudge. I lay there in the dark, listening to the wind rattle the garage door. I could see my breath in the air. The space heater was struggling. My tools were stacked against the wall. DeWalt miter saw, Makita impact driver, Milwaukee drill set, table saw, nail guns, levels, squares. Every tool I'd ever saved up for, bought with money from jobs where I'd worked until my back screamed and my hands bled. Tools that had built decks and additions and entire houses. Tools that had built that suite that I was no longer allowed to sleep in. I looked at those tools for a long time. And that's when it hit me. Really hit me. I wasn't their son. Not in any way that mattered. I was infrastructure. I was the foundation they built their lives on. I was a load-bearing wall that held everything up while staying hidden behind the drywall. Invisible. Taken for granted. Essential but unappreciated. They'd hang Steve's picture on that wall. They'd celebrate him, support him, make space for him. And I'd just keep holding everything up from behind the scenes until I cracked. Load-bearing walls are funny things. You can't see them once the house is finished. They don't get the credit. But remove one, and the whole structure comes down. I stare at the ceiling of that garage, at the insulation I'd stapled up there myself, and I understood something I'd been too stubborn or too loyal or too stupid to see before. They didn't need me to be their son. They needed me to be their tool. The space heater clicked off. The cold rushed in. I pulled the sleeping bag tighter around myself, but sleep wasn't coming. I sat up. The garage was darker now. Just a faint orange glow from the streetlight filtering through the window. My tools were lined up against the wall like soldiers. Waiting. I reached over and grabbed my 4-pound drilling hammer from the pile. Heavy thing. Solid steel head. Fiberglass handle. The kind of tool you use for breaking concrete. Driving stakes. Demolition work. I'd use it to knock down walls, bust up old foundations, tear things down to studs. I ran my thumb over the steel head. Cold, unforgiving, honest in a way people never are. This hammer didn't care about chakras or cosmic energy or any of that spiritual nonsense. It only understood force and impact, physics, reality. It was designed for one purpose: to break things. I weighed it in my hand. For pounds doesn't sound like much until you're holding it at midnight in a freezing garage, realizing that everything you built your life around was constructed on a foundation of sand. I set it down right next to the air mattress, close enough to reach, just in case. I didn't know what just in case meant yet, but having it there made me feel less helpless, less like infrastructure and more like something with a potential for action. I lay back down and closed my eyes. Tomorrow I'd go to work. I'd frame out someone else's addition or pour someone else's foundation. I'd come home to this garage that smelled like motor oil and damp concrete. I'd probably see Steve through the window of the suite I built, sitting in front of that river stone fireplace, warm and comfortable in the space I created. And I'd start to realize that sometimes the strongest thing you can build is a wall between yourself and the people who only see you as mortar. A week in that garage taught me things about myself I wish I didn't know. I learned that the human body can adapt to damn near anything if you give it no choice. The concrete floor stopped feeling quite so hard after the third night. The cold became something I just wore, like an extra layer of clothing. The smell of motor oil and old paint mixed with the scent of my own unwashed body until I couldn't tell where the garage ended and I began. I kept my routine. Up at 5:30. Instant coffee heated on a camping stove I dug out of storage. Brushed my teeth with water from a jug because I wasn't about to walk into that house and risk running into Steve in his meditation robe or whatever he wore now. Out the door by 6 to whatever job site needed me that day. The work was good, mindless, physical. I could pour concrete or frame walls and not think about the fact that my entire life had been reduced to 150 square feet of garage space that smelled like gasoline and defeat. My stuff was everywhere and nowhere. The things I kept in the suite, the small pieces of my life, had been packed up by someone, not carefully. When I came back from work on the third day, I found cardboard boxes stacked outside the garage door. Books, old photos, my grandfather's pocket watch, a framed picture of me and Dad at a Dodgers game when I was 12. Everything was damp. It had rained the night before, and whoever put the boxes out there hadn't bothered to cover them. The cardboard was soft, disintegrating. Some of my books were ruined. The photo of me and Dad had water damage, the edges curling up. I didn't say anything, just carried the boxes inside, one by one, and stacked them against the wall where they took up space I didn't have. The garage was getting smaller. I was getting smaller, shrinking down to fit the space they decided I was worth. Steve had settled into the suite, like he'd always lived there. I could see the lights on at night, through the window I'd installed. Sometimes I'd hear music, meditation chants, or singing bowls, or whatever sounds you need when you're aligning your chakras. The fireplace glowed warm, the one I'd built, stone by stone. On day 7, everything changed. I was under my truck, changing the oil, when I heard screaming from the suite. Not danger screaming, frustration screaming. The kind of tantrum a grown man throws when technology doesn't bend to his will immediately. Steve was having a crisis. My mother appeared at the garage door, already talking before I'd even slid out from under the truck. Steve couldn't stream his webinar. The internet was cutting out. He had 50 people waiting on Zoom, and the connection kept dropping. This was a disaster. He was going to lose credibility, lose followers. His reputation was on the line. Could I please come fix it? She said please twice, which almost made me laugh. Please had been absent from her vocabulary for the past week. But now Steve needed something, and suddenly I was worth asking politely. I wiped my hands on a rag and followed her into the house. The smell hit me first. Coffee, toast, warmth. The scent of a house that people actually lived in, not a garage they stored their disappointments in. I'd forgotten what that felt like. To be inside, To be warm without having to wear 3 layers and huddle next to a space heater. Steve was in the suite, pacing back and forth in front of his laptop setup. He'd rearranged everything. My bookshelf was gone. Where the couch used to be, he'd put meditation corner with cushions and that ridiculous crystal singing bowl. The fireplace had pictures of him on the mantel, his certifications, his inspirational quotes printed on expensive paper in frames. He looked at me like I was the cable guy. Didn't say hello. Didn't acknowledge that this used to be my home. Just launched into a technical explanation of his problem that made it clear he had no idea how internet actually worked. The router was in the main house. I went to check it, and that's when Mom handed me the iPad. The family iPad, the one that usually sat on the kitchen counter for recipes and grocery lists. She said, I might need it to adjust the settings, change the password, whatever tech magic I could do to make Steve's precious webinar happen. I took the iPad into the den, opened it up. The screen was locked. I knew the passcode, same one they'd used for years. Mom's birthday backwards. The device woke up, started syncing, and that's when I saw it. iCloud decided, in that exact moment, to sync everything. Messages, photos, all of it flooding onto the screen in real time like some kind of digital truth serum. A notification popped up. Group chat. The name made my stomach drop before I even opened it. Winner's circle. I knew I shouldn't look. The same way you know you shouldn't pick at a scab or look at the sun directly. But my thumb was already tapping it, opening it, scrolling. The most recent message was from 2 days ago. A photo. All of them at some upscale restaurant downtown. The kind with cloth napkins and prices that aren't on the menu. They were eating lobster. Actual lobster. Steve had his arm around his wife. Mom and Dad were smiling, holding up their wine glasses. The caption read, celebrating new beginnings without the dead weight. Dead weight. I stood there in the den, holding that iPad, and something in my chest just stopped. Not broke. Stopped. Like a clock that finally ran out of battery. I scrolled up, further back. Weeks of messages. Months maybe. Mom had written something in September, right after I'd given them $5,000. She'd told me Dad needed an operation, something with his hip. They didn't have the money. Insurance wouldn't cover it all. I gave them the money without hesitation. Took it right out of my savings. Money I'd been putting away for years. Her message said, thank God David fell for the surgery story. The new Louis Vuitton bag is absolutely gorgeous. I wanted one for years. There was a photo attached. Her, in front of a mirror, holding a designer handbag that cost what I made in a month. My hands started shaking. I kept scrolling. Dad's message from October, don't worry, son. We're transferring the house into a trust under your name next week. David is our retirement plan. He'll keep paying the mortgage even from the garage. He's too stupid and loyal to leave. Too stupid and loyal to leave. Steve had responded, just keep him out of the suite. The smell of his work clothes makes me sick. More messages. More photos. Them at concerts. At wineries. Weekend trips to the coast. All funded by what? By me? By the $1,400 a month I was paying? By the $5,000 I'd handed over for an operation that never happened? I don't know how long I stood there. Time did something weird, stretched and compressed at the same time. I heard Steve yelling from the suite about his webinar starting in 5 minutes. Heard Mom calling my name, asking if I'd figured out the internet problem. I set the iPad down on the desk, very carefully, like it was made of something explosive. My hands had stopped shaking. Everything had stopped. I felt nothing, a complete absence of feeling, like someone had scooped out my insides and left just a shell walking around. That's the thing about betrayal. People think it's hot, like anger, like fire. It's not. It's cold. It's ice water in your veins. It's standing in a room you've been in 1,000 times and suddenly not recognizing anything, including yourself. I fixed their internet. I don't even remember doing it, but I must have because Steve's webinar started on time. I walked out of that house without saying a word to anyone. I got in my truck and drove. No destination. Just drove. Ended up at a gas station about 15 miles away, one of those big ones off the highway with 40 pumps and a convenience store that sells everything from beef jerky to motor oil. I sat in the parking lot, watched people fill their tanks, go about their normal days, living lives where their families probably didn't refer to them as dead weight in group chats. Eventually, I went inside, bought coffee because that's what you do when your brain stops working. The cashier was a kid, maybe 19, with bad skin and kind eyes. He asked if I was okay. I must have looked rough. I told him I was fine. We both knew it was a lie. The total came to $3.47. I gave him a 5. He handed me back $1.53. 2 quarters and 3 ones. There was a lottery machine by the counter. One of those Powerball things that promises you millions in exchange for your last $2. The jackpot was up to $240 million. The digital sign flashed and rotated, trying to hypnotize people into buying hope. I looked at the $2 in my hand. Sometimes God flips a coin for fools. That's what my grandfather used to say. Not that God cares about fools, but that sometimes the universe has a sense of irony. I bought a ticket. Quick pick. Let the machine choose the numbers because I didn't care enough to choose my own. The cashier handed me the slip of paper, and I shoved it into my jacket pocket without looking at it. The pocket that was still slightly damp from the rain. The jacket that smelled like motor oil and Steve probably thought was disgusting. I sat in my truck until the coffee was gone and the sun was setting. Then I drove back to the garage. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there on the air mattress, staring at the ceiling, doing math in my head. 3 years of mortgage payments. 1,400 times 36. Over $50,000. Plus the $5,000 for the fake surgery. Plus all the repairs, the materials, the labor I'd never charge them for. They didn't owe me money, though. Money was just money. They owed me something I couldn't get back. They'd taken the person I used to be, the one who believed family was sacred, and they'd turned him into something I didn't recognize. A retirement plan. Dead weight. I must have fallen asleep at some point, because I woke up to gray morning light filtering through the garage window. It was early, before 6. The house was still quiet. I don't know why I checked a lottery ticket. Maybe because I needed something to do with my hands. Maybe because checking it meant I didn't have to think about that group chat, about the Louis Vuitton bag, about being too stupid and loyal to leave. I pulled the crumpled ticket from my jacket pocket, opened up my phone, went to the lottery website, started checking numbers. First number matched. Okay, that happens sometimes. Second number matched. Third number matched. My hands started shaking again, but different this time. Not from shock or betrayal. From something else. Something that felt like lightning running through my bones. Fourth number. Fifth number. Sixth number. All matched. I checked it again. Then again. Then a fourth time. Went to 3 different lottery websites to make sure they all showed the same winning numbers. They did. Every single one. I sat there on that air mattress in that freezing garage with a piece of paper worth more money than I could process, and I started laughing. Quiet at first, then louder. The kind of laugh that comes from somewhere deep and desperate and a little bit insane. $240 million. Before taxes, sure. But even after taxes, even after the government took their half, I have more money than my entire family would see in 10 lifetimes of lying to each other and stealing from the people dumb enough to love them. God didn't flip a coin for fools. God dropped an anvil on my family's head and handed me the detonator. I didn't tell anyone. That was the first clear thought I had. Don't tell a single person. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not Steve with his meditation cushions and his disgust at my work clothes. Not anyone. I got up, moved mechanically, like I was following instructions only I could hear. Started packing. Not everything, just what mattered. My tools, every single one. The DeWalt miter saw, the Makita impact driver, the Milwaukee drill set, my grandfather's pocket watch, the photo of me and Dad at the Dodgers game, even though it was water damaged. I loaded the truck quietly. The sun was just starting to come up. The house was still dark. Steve was probably asleep in the bed that used to be mine, In the suite I built, under the roof I'd shingled, next to the fireplace I'd assembled stone by stone. When the truck was packed, I went back into the garage one last time, grabbed a piece of paper and a pen, wrote 4 sentences. That's all it took to end 42 years. I left a note on the kitchen table with my house keys on top of it. The note said, "Sorry, the retirement plan is closed. I'm alive. Don't look for me, or I'll tell the IRS about the income you've been hiding. Goodbye." That last part was a bluff. I didn't know if they were hiding income, but they believe I knew. They believe I'd been paying attention all along. And that fear would keep them from calling the police, from making a big deal out of my disappearance. Because if I was stupid enough to leave, I might be smart enough to burn them on the way out. I got in my truck, started the engine. It caught on the first try, reliable as always. I maintained this truck better than most people maintain their marriages. Backed out of the driveway, slowly. No rush, no drama. Just a man leaving for work like any other morning, except I wasn't coming back. I reached the end of the driveway, put the truck in drive, looked in the rear view mirror one last time. The house sat there, dark, quiet, getting smaller as I pulled away. All that work, all those years, all that love I'd poured into the foundation, the walls, the fireplace, the suite. None of it mattered, because love wasn't currency to them. It was a loan they never intended to repay. I pulled out my phone at the first red light, blocked Mom's number, blocked Dad's number, blocked Steve's number, one by one, deleting them from my life as easily as they deleted me from theirs. The light turned green. I drove. The sun was rising behind me, turning the sky pink and gold. In front of me, the road stretched out empty and open. I didn't know where I was going yet. Didn't matter. Anywhere was better than the garage. Anywhere was better than being someone's retirement plan. I cranked up the radio. Classic rock station. Tom Petty was singing about being free falling. I wasn't free falling. I was flying. The house disappeared completely in the rear view mirror. Just trees now, then highway signs, then miles of road that put distance between me and everything I used to be. My phone started buzzing. I glanced down. Unknown number. Probably one of them, calling from someone else's phone. I hit decline. Then I turned the phone off completely. They'd figure out I was gone eventually. They'd search the garage and find it empty. They'd see the note. They'd panic or rage or blame each other. I didn't care anymore. That was their problem now. I had the winning lottery ticket in my pocket and a full tank of gas. I had my tools in the truck bed, and absolutely nothing tied me to that place anymore. For the first time in 7 days, I felt warm, not from a space heater or extra layers, or a sleeping bag that barely kept out the cold. Warm from the inside, from possibility, from the knowledge that sometimes the universe doesn't flip coins for fools. Sometimes it loads the dice and lets you win. 8 months is enough time to become a different person. Not better or worse necessarily, just different. Like a house that gets remodeled so completely you can't tell what the original structure looked like anymore. I bought a small ranch in Montana. 20 acres of nothing but grass and sky and silence. The kind of place where your nearest neighbor is 3 miles away, and the only thing that wakes you up in the morning is the sun and maybe a hawk screaming somewhere over the ridge. The house was small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchen with appliances from the 90s. But it was mine. Paid in cash. No mortgage. No one could take it from me because I owed them something or because they decided someone else needed it more. I spent my days building things. Not for money, though I had more of that than I'd ever need. I built because it's what I knew, what made sense. I turned the barn into a woodworking shop. Made furniture. Tables. Chairs. Headboards. Things that were solid and honest and didn't lie about what they were. My hand got cleaner out there. The constant layer of concrete dust and paint and grime started to fade. I developed what you'd call a healthy tan from working outside without a shirt, feeling the sun on my shoulders while I sanded wood or stained a table leg. I looked peaceful, I guess. People in town probably thought I was some kind of trust fund kid playing at being a craftsman. They had no idea. Because I hadn't forgotten. Not for 1 second. Not for one single day of those 8 months. I hired a private investigator. Cost me $1,500 a month, which was nothing. The PI's name was Marcus, former cop, the kind of guy who knew how to be invisible. I gave him one job: watch the house, watch my family, document everything. And when I didn't want to wait for Marcus's reports, I had my own methods. Created a fake Facebook account. Michael Thompson. Generic profile, picture stolen from some stock photo site. Sent friend requests to some of my parents' neighbors. People I remember from growing up. Nice folks who accepted requests from anyone. They posted everything. Pictures of the neighborhood. Complaints about property values. And eventually, as things got worse, updates about the house at the end of the street that was falling apart. The reports came in like chapters of a book I'd already written in my head. Month 1, water heater failed. Flooded the basement. Steve tried to fix it himself with YouTube videos. Made it worse. Had to call an emergency plumber who charged triple because it was a weekend. Month 2, the pool turned green. Algae bloom. So thick it looked like a swamp. Steve hired a pool service, but they were expensive. He canceled after one visit and tried to handle it himself with chemicals from Walmart. Made it worse. The neighbors started complaining about the smell. Month 3, the roof started leaking. Right over Steve's meditation corner in the suite. The suite I'd built. The roof I'd installed with my own hands, using proper underlayment and ice shields and every technique I'd learned from 20 years in construction. But roofs need maintenance, inspections, small repairs before they become big problems. Nobody had been doing that maintenance. Water came through the ceiling and destroyed Steve's sound healing equipment, his crystal bowls, his expensive meditation cushions. Marcus sent me photos. I looked at them over morning coffee and felt absolutely nothing. Month 4, the real crisis started. My parents couldn't make the mortgage payments. Turns out when you lose $1,400 a month in income and you've been living beyond your means for years, the math catches up fast. They tried to refinance. Got rejected. Their credit was terrible. Maxed out cards. Late payments. The kind of financial profile that makes banks laugh you out of the building. Steve had a solution. Of course he did. Steve always had solutions that involved other people's money. He convinced them to take out what's called a hard money loan. Private lenders who charge interest rates that would make a mob boss blush. 15%, 20%, sometimes more. They're designed for house flippers who plan to sell quickly, not for desperate people trying to save a sinking ship. But Steve had a plan. He'd been studying cryptocurrency. He knew a guy. There was this new token that was about to explode. Ground floor opportunity. They could triple their money in a month, pay off the loan, and have cash left over. My parents signed the papers. The crypto crashed 2 weeks later. Not just crashed. Evaporated. The token was some kind of scam, a rug pull, one of those things where the creators take everyone's money and disappear into the digital void. Every dollar Steve invested turned into nothing, just zeros in a digital wallet that might as well have been a black hole. The hard money loan was due in 90 days. They couldn't pay it. The lenders started foreclosure proceedings immediately. That's the thing about predatory loans. They're designed to take your house. The loan is just a mechanism. They want you to fail. Marcus sent me the foreclosure notice. Official document. Legal language. 30 days to vacate. The house would be sold at auction to recover the debt. I read it 3 times. Drank my coffee. Watched the sun come up over my 20 acres of freedom. Felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not quite happiness. Not quite satisfaction. Something colder. More precise. Justice maybe. The kind that doesn't come from courts or karma, but from simple cause and effect. From the universe following its own mathematics. They started calling. I'd blocked their numbers, but they found other ways. Used friends' phones. Used neighbors' phones. Left voicemails on my old number that somehow still worked. I'd set up a Google Voice account before I left, and it forwarded everything to email as transcripts. The first voicemails were begging. Mom crying. Dad's voice shaking. They needed help. They'd made mistakes. Family is forever. Blood is thicker than water. All the greatest hits of parental manipulation. Then the messages changed. Week 2, they got angry. How dare I abandon them? After everything they'd done for me. 18 years of raising me, and this is how I repaid them. I was selfish, ungrateful, a disappointment. Week 3, they tried threats. They'd sue me for elder abandonment, make me pay support. They'd tell everyone what kind of person I really was. They'd ruin my reputation. I listened to the transcripts the way some people listen to podcasts. Background noise while I sanded furniture or finished a table. Their desperation became white noise. Static. The house went up for auction. I saw the listing online. Public records. Everything's public when you're losing your home. Address. Photos. Legal description. Estimated value versus minimum bid. The photos were devastating. The house looked like it had aged 30 years and 8 months. Paint peeling. Roof visibly sagging. The lawn was dead. The pool was still green. You could see water stains on the ceiling in one of the interior shots. The place I'd maintained. The place I'd loved. It looked like a corpse. I made a phone call. Set up an LLC. Iron Foundation, I called it. Hired a lawyer to handle the paperwork. Created a shell around myself so thick no one could see through it to the other side. The LLC would bid on the house. The LLC would win. And no one would know who owned the LLC until I decided they should know. The lawyer asked if I was sure. There were emotional considerations, legal complications. This could get messy. I told him I was counting on it getting messy. Auction day. I didn't attend in person. Sent a real estate agent I'd hired specifically for this. Woman named Patricia, late 50s, sharp as a knife and twice as cold. I'd explained the situation. She'd raised one eyebrow and quoted me a premium rate for what she called hazard pay. She called me from the auction. Bluetooth earpiece. I could hear the auctioneer in the background. That rapid-fire chant that sounds like a foreign language. Patricia told me there were problems. The current occupants were refusing to leave. They were claiming squatters' rights. They'd already told the bank they weren't going anywhere. Any buyer would have to deal with eviction. It would be expensive. Ugly. Most bidders had walked away. I told Patricia to bid anyway. She started to argue, explained that the property was essentially contaminated. The eviction could take months. Legal fees, court costs, possible damage to the property from hostile occupants. Was I sure I wanted this headache? I told her I was paying for exactly this headache. She paused. I heard her breathe. Then she laughed. Short, sharp, the kind of laugh that meant she understood something I hadn't said out loud. She told me she'd handle it. The bidding started low. The house was a disaster. Everyone could see that. A few investors threw out lowball offers, testing the waters. Nothing serious. Patricia waited. Patient. Let them play their games. Then, when the auctioneer was about to call it, she bid. $10,000 over the minimum. Firm. Clear. The kind of bid that says this isn't negotiation. Someone countered. Patricia went higher. They went higher. She went higher still. 3 rounds of this. Then silence. No one else wanted to mess. The lawsuit waiting to happen. The family that wouldn't leave. The repairs that would cost more than the house was worth. Patricia had the high bid. The auctioneer did his countdown. Going once. Going twice. I heard the gavel hit. That sharp crack. Final. Irreversible. Sold. The house was mine. My parents didn't know yet. They thought some investor had bought it. Some faceless corporation that they could appeal to, negotiate with. They'd already started planning their strategy according to Marcus. They'd explained their situation. Play up the sympathy angle. Maybe the new owner would let them stay as renters. Maybe they'd work out a deal. They had no idea the new owner had been planning this since the day he drove away. I gave them 2 weeks. Let them sit in that house, in that uncertainty, wondering who owned their lives now. Let them feel what I felt in that garage. Small, powerless, at someone else's mercy. Then I had the permits delivered. Demolition permits. bright orange. Official. They went up on the fence overnight. City approved. All legal. The house was coming down in 72 hours. Marcus sent me photos the next morning. My parents outside in their bathrobes, staring at the permits like they were written in alien language. Steve pacing back and forth. Phone pressed his ear, probably calling lawyers who'd tell him there was nothing they could do. His wife cry on the front steps. They looked old. All of them. Worn down. Gray. The kind of aging that happens when stress and desperation squeeze the life out of you one day at a time. I felt nothing. No, that's a lie. I felt something. I felt ready. Demo day. I drove through the night to get there. Pulled up at dawn. My truck, black and clean, looking about 10,000 times better than I did 8 months ago. Behind me, a flatbed carrying an excavator. Bright yellow. Diesel engine. The machine that would turn my past into rubble. The sun was just coming up. Perfect lighting. Like a movie. I got out of the truck. They were already outside. Waiting. Hoping. Mom saw me first. Her face did something complicated. Shock. Relief. Joy. Fear. All of it happening at once. She started crying immediately. The ugly kind of crying that shakes your whole body. She ran toward me. Actually ran. Bathrobe flapping. Hair a mess. She looked like she'd aged 20 years. She grabbed my arms, her fingers digging in with desperate strength. Told me she knew I'd come back. Knew I wouldn't abandon them. I was a good son. I was their salvation. I'd bought the house, hadn't I? I'd save them. She knew I would. She knew it. Steve came up behind her. Slower. More cautious. But there was hope in his eyes, too. Arrogance, even. Like this was how it was supposed to go. Like the universe had corrected itself and put me back in my place. The place where I fixed their problems and asked for nothing in return. He told me it was about time. Said they'd been waiting for me to come to my senses. Told me to hand over the keys so they could start moving their stuff back in. They'd packed it all. They were ready. Dad just stood there on the porch, arms crossed, watching. He didn't run over, didn't cry, but I saw it in his face. That same expectation, that same certainty that I'd fold, that I'd be who they needed me to be. The retirement plan. Too stupid and loyal to leave. I didn't say anything at first. Just pulled out my phone, opened an app, connected to the truck's sound system via Bluetooth. Then I played it. The audio I'd recorded from that iPad. The group chat. Their voices. Crystal clear. Loud enough for the whole street to hear. The neighbors were already coming out. Watching. Gossip travels fast on streets like this. And a demolition crew at dawn was prime entertainment. Dad's voice came through the speakers first. That message about the trust. About me being their retirement plan. About me being too stupid and loyal to leave. Every word. Every betrayal. Amplified. Then Mom, talking about the fake surgery. About the Louis Vuitton bag. Laughing about how easy it was. Then Steve, complaining about the smell of my work clothes. Saying he didn't want me in the suite. Saying I was low vibration. The audio played for 90 seconds. Felt like 90 years. Mom's face went white. Actually white. Like someone had drained all the blood out of her. She stopped crying. Just stopped. Frozen. Steve backed up. Started saying it wasn't like that. It was taken out of context. I didn't understand. He could explain. Dad didn't move. Just stood there. Jaw tight. He knew. He knew exactly what was happening. I turned off the audio. The street was dead quiet. Even the birds had shut up. 20, 30 neighbors standing in driveways and on porches watching. They'd heard everything. Every word. And they'd remember it. This street would be talking about this for years. I looked at my mother, spoke for the first time since I'd arrived, told her I didn't come back to let them stay, told her I came back to finish the job. I told her the house was rotten. The rot went all the way down to the foundation, and the foundation was them, their lies, their manipulation, their willingness to turn their son into a tool they could use and discard. Told them they weren't family anymore. They were squatters. Trespassers in a building I owned reached into my truck, pulled out an envelope, $5,000 cash, counted it out in front of them, exactly $5,000, the same amount they'd stolen for a fake surgery and spent on a purse. Threw it at their feet, the bills scattered on the dead grass. Told them that was for a motel. They had 15 minutes to get their personal belongings, clothes, documents, whatever they could carry. Everything else was staying. Mom started screaming, told me I couldn't do this. We were family. You don't do this to family. She raised me. She gave birth to me. I owed her. I told her the debt was paid. With interest. Steve tried a different approach. Started talking about forgiveness, about healing, about moving forward. His life coach voice. Calm, centered, absolutely worthless. I told him he had 14 minutes left. Dad finally moved, came down off the porch, walked right up to me, close enough that I could see how much he'd aged, the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes, the way his hands shook just slightly. He told me I'd regret this, told me I was making a mistake, told me I was destroying the only family I'd ever have. I told him he destroyed the family 8 months ago when he called me a retirement plan in a text message he thought I'd never see. Then I told him he had 13 minutes. They scrambled, all 3 of them, running into the house, grabbing things, throwing them into garbage bags and old suitcases. Chaotic, desperate, the way I'd pack my stuff when they kicked me out to the garage. Poetic, that's the word. It was poetic. 12 minutes later, they were standing on the curb, bags at their feet, nowhere to go. Mom was still crying. Steve was on his phone, probably calling his wife who'd left him 3 months ago, according to Marcus. Dad just stared at me with something that might have been respect, if it wasn't so full of hate. I walked over to the excavator. The operator was already in the cab. Big guy named Tommy, former Marine, didn't ask questions when I hired him. Just wanted to know where to put the bucket. I gave him the signal. The engine roared to life. Diesel smoke. The smell of power and destruction. The sound of metal and hydraulics and inevitability. Tommy didn't start with the main house. That would have been too easy. Too merciful. He started with the suite. The in-law suite. The addition I'd built with my own hands. The place I'd lived before they decided I wasn't worth keeping around. The bucket swung wide. Hung there for a second. Time did that thing where it stretches and compresses at the same time. Then it crashed down. The river stone fireplace exploded. Stone I'd selected piece by piece. Stone I'd laid over the course of a month. Stone I'd been proud of. It turned to rubble in 2 seconds. Dust cloud rising. The sound of breaking rock echoing off the houses around us. Mom screamed. Actual screaming. Like someone was killing her. Maybe someone was. Sometimes you can kill a person without touching them. You just take away everything they thought they owned. Steve was crying now, openly, sitting on the curb with his head in his hands, his meditation corner, his chakra restoration space, his crystal singing bowls, all of it getting crushed into powder. Dad didn't cry, just watched, stone-faced, the house he'd raised his kids in, the house he'd planned to turn into a trust under Steve's name, the retirement plan that was supposed to carry them through their golden years. Coming down, one bucket load at a time. The suite came apart like it was made of paper. Walls, roof, that bathroom with the rainfall shower, the jacuzzi tub Mom had always wanted, the separate entrance that was supposed to give them independence, all of it turning into a pile of broken wood and shattered dreams. Tommy moved on to the main house, started with the roof, the one that had leaked on Steve's meditation corner. The one nobody had maintained after I left. It came apart even faster. Water damage had rotted the decking. The structure was compromised. What should have taken hours took minutes. The whole thing just collapsed inward, folded like a house of cards. I watched the place where I grew up disappear. The kitchen where we'd had Thanksgiving dinner. Where Dad had used my childhood against me. The living room where we'd watch movies. The bedrooms where I'd slept as a kid before I learned that family could be a weapon. All of it gone. The dust was everywhere. Thick, choking. It covered the street, covered the neighbors' cars, covered my family standing on the curb with their garbage bags. Covered me, too. I could taste it. Concrete and drywall, and the past turning to powder in my lungs. It tasted like freedom. Tommy shut down the excavator. The sudden silence was almost as loud as the destruction had been. My ears rang. The whole street seemed to be holding its breath. I walked back to my truck. Didn't look at my parents. Didn't look at Steve. Didn't need to. They were in my peripheral vision. Small, broken, exactly as irrelevant as they'd made me feel in that garage. I got in the truck, started the engine, looked in the rear-view mirror. Not at them, at the pile of rubble where the house used to be, where my childhood used to be, where I used to think family meant something permanent and unconditional. Some people say you can't burn bridges, that you need to keep every connection alive because you never know when you might need it. Those people are wrong. Sometimes burning bridges is the only way to light your path forward. Sometimes you need to turn everything to ash before you can build something new. I didn't just demolish a house that day. I demolished a prison, the one with walls made of guilt and obligation, and the fear of being alone, the one that kept me small and useful and disposable. The house was gone. The family was gone. The old version of me was buried under 6 feet of rubble, and I'd never felt more alive. I put the truck in drive, pulled away slowly. The sun was higher now. Full morning, the start of a new day. Behind me, my mother was screaming something. I couldn't hear it over the engine. Didn't matter. Whatever she was saying, it wasn't for me. I wasn't her retirement plan anymore. I wasn't her tool. I wasn't her son. I was just a guy with a truck and 20 acres in Montana and a lottery ticket that changed everything. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. They're wrong about that, too. Revenge is a dish best served with a demolition permit and an excavator and the certain knowledge that sometimes the strongest foundation you can build is the one that has nothing to do with family. I drove toward the sunrise. Didn't look back again. Didn't need to. The bridge was burned. The path was lit. The prison was rubble. And I was free.